strange thing about moments like this. You're sitting here, watching, maybe thinking it's just another voice, another set of words drifting into the noise of your day. But what if it's not? What if this, right here, is the spark, the trigger, the domino that tips the whole line? People never notice the shift while it's happening. They think change announces itself with fireworks, sirens, grand parades. No, it creeps in, quiet, disguised, hidden inside something ordinary. And then, suddenly, everything's different. Something big doesn't knock on the door. It slips through the cracks. And once it's here, nothing in your life will ever fit the same way again. Small sparks ignite the biggest fires. People always imagine that change comes like a storm, loud, violent, impossible to miss. They think it'll crash into their lives with thunder and lightning, warning them, giving them time to prepare. But that's not how it works, is it? Real change, the kind that burns everything down and rebuilds it, almost never announces itself. It slips in quietly, disguised as something small, something ordinary. A single word, a decision, a choice you didn't think twice about. A spark so small you could have ignored it, but you didn't. And that tiny spark, that barely noticeable flicker, becomes the fire that consumes everything you thought was permanent. It's almost laughable when you look back. How something so insignificant could carry so much weight. You'll remember the moment clearly. The look, the sentence, the chance encounter, the thought that wouldn't leave you alone. At the time, it didn't feel big. It didn't feel like destiny knocking. It felt like nothing. But that's the trick. Sparks don't roar. Sparks don't shine. Sparks are small, fragile, almost invisible. And yet, when they land on the right place, the dry wood of your doubts, the fuel of your frustration, the cracks in your heart, they explode into something you can't stop. That's when you realize it was never about the size of the spark. It was always about the fire it had the potential to unleash. And isn't it funny how people ignore sparks? They brush them off, laugh at them, dismiss them as just a thought or just a feeling. They underestimate the little things, and then they wonder why their lives never change. Because they're waiting for an explosion when all it takes is one flicker, one decision, one shift. The irony. Most people don't miss out on big change because it wasn't offered. They miss it because they were too blind to notice the spark right in front of them, too distracted, too afraid, too busy clinging to the comfort of their old flames, even if those flames have already gone out. But once the fire catches, oh, there's no stopping it. You try to control it, contain it, keep it small, manageable. But that's not how fire works. It spreads. It grows. It devours everything that stands in its way. And the more you resist it, the more it burns. At first, it feels destructive, painful, like the spark betrayed you. You'll watch parts of your life turn to ash, and you'll hate it. But then, slowly, you realize what the fire was really doing. It was clearing space, making room for something new. And suddenly, the destruction feels less like chaos and more like liberation. The fire wasn't here to kill you. It was here to burn away what couldn't survive anymore. And the best part, you never see the full fire when you're staring at the spark. You can't. It's impossible to predict how far it will spread, how much it will consume, how much it will transform. That's why it feels so absurd. How can something so small hold so much power? But that's the nature of sparks. They don't carry the fire inside them. They carry the possibility. They carry the seed of something unstoppable. And it's only when you let them land, when you stop brushing them off, that you see what they're truly capable of. So maybe the real strength isn't in chasing explosions, but in paying attention to the sparks, the quiet whispers, the gut feelings, the little decisions that feel meaningless at the time, because those are the things that light the path. Those are the things that rewrite your life when you're not looking, and when the fire finally rises, when it engulfs everything you thought would last forever. You'll trace it back to that tiny moment, that fragile spark, and you'll laugh, because the biggest fire you've ever known was born from the smallest flicker you almost ignored change hides inside the ordinary. That's the cruel trick of it all. People expect change to come crashing in with drama, with noise, with flashing lights that scream, here it is." But the truth, it wears a disguise. It slips in quietly, wearing the mask of routine. You think it's just another day, another conversation, another choice you've made 1,000 times before. Nothing special, nothing important. But somewhere inside that ordinary moment, the ground shifts. You don't notice it right away. You never do. Only later. When everything's different. When everything's burning or rebuilding. Do you look back and realize that was it? That was the moment it all began. It could be something as small as a word. Someone says something, and it lands differently this time. Or a decision you make without thinking twice. Take the left street instead of the right. Sit in the back instead of the front. Say yes when your instinct whispered no. Tiny things. Insignificant, right? Until the ripples start. Until that single choice collides with another and another, until suddenly the whole picture is unrecognizable. That's the joke. Life doesn't need a grand stage to shift. It just needs a crack in your routine. A crack so small you don't notice it until it's already torn the whole thing apart, and people miss it all the time. They walk through their lives blind, waiting for a big announcement, waiting for fate to show up with fireworks and neon signs. And because they're waiting for the spectacular, they ignore the subtle. They dismiss the ordinary, not realizing that the ordinary is where change hides best. It's camouflage. Because if you saw it coming, if you knew the exact moment everything would turn, you'd fight it. You'd resist. You'd try to control it, stop it, bend it to your will. So life keeps it hidden. It smuggles change into the cracks of everyday moments where you're too distracted to notice what's really happening. And when it hits, when you finally see the shift, you feel betrayed. You look back and think, how did I not notice? How could I have missed it? But that's the point. You were never supposed to notice. You were supposed to stumble into it, blind and unprepared, because only then does it do its work. Only then does it rip away your certainty, tear at your comfort, force you into a corner where you can't escape the transformation. Change is a thief, and the ordinary is its perfect disguise. You invite it in because you don't recognize it, and by the time you do, it's already rearranged everything. And isn't it ironic? The moments you shrug off, the ones you swear mean nothing, end up meaning everything. The conversation you barely remember becomes the turning point. The mistake you thought was small becomes the lesson that reshaped you. The routine you thought was harmless becomes the chain you're forced to break. Change doesn't live in the grand moments. It thrives in the unnoticed ones. The whispers, not the shouts. The cracks, not the explosions. That's why it feels so shocking when it finally arrives. You didn't see it because you weren't supposed to. You weren't watching because you thought there was nothing to see. And yet, when you look back, the signs were always there. That strange feeling in your gut, that sense of something shifting under the surface. You ignored it because it didn't scream loud enough. But the ordinary is where the extraordinary hides. That's where it waits. In silence, in disguise, until the right moment to show you what it really is. And by then, it's too late to turn back. You've already stepped into the new. You've already crossed the line. And the ordinary day you barely noticed becomes the day you can never forget. One moment can rewrite the whole story. That's the part nobody likes to admit, how fragile their little timelines really are. People walk around with this illusion that their lives are solid, stable, set in stone. They draw out their futures like blueprints, convinced that if they stick to the plan, nothing will break. But it only takes a second to rip the whole script apart. One word, one choice, one accident, one confession, and suddenly the story you thought you were living is gone, torn up, replaced by something you never saw coming. It's almost laughable how quickly it all can change. Think about it. You could be walking down the street, lost in thought, carrying the weight of your so-called destiny, and then, bam, a phone call, a glance, a decision to turn left instead of right. Something so small, so ordinary, and yet it rips through your life like a knife. In that instant, the person you thought you were, the life you thought you had, dissolves. The story you've been telling yourself gets rewritten, whether you're ready for it or not. And the cruel part, you never see it coming. You never get the warning. Because if you did, you'd try to stop it. You'd cling to the old script. But that's not how stories work. They don't ask for your permission before they change direction. And isn't it strange how much power a single moment can hold? We act like our lives are built on years of effort, years of choices layered on top of each other. And sure, that's part of it. But the truth is that 1 second can undo all of it. 1 second can burn down a decade of certainty. And that second doesn't care about how much you've invested, how much you've sacrificed, how much you've prayed. It would all stay the same. The second doesn't care. It comes, it flips the table, and it forces you to face a new story you never wanted to read. That's the part most people can't handle. They want life to be fair, predictable, controllable. They want their stories to follow neat little arcs. beginning, middle, end. No sharp turns, no sudden edits. But the real story, the one you're actually living, isn't neat at all. It's jagged. It's chaotic. It's written in ink that smudges. Tears gets rewritten mid-sentence. And one moment, just one, can change the entire meaning. What you thought was a tragedy becomes a comedy. What you thought was safety becomes a trap. What you thought was the end turns out to be the beginning. That's the madness of it all. 1 second, and you're not the same character anymore. Most people look back at their lives and can pinpoint it. The moment. The conversation that changed everything. The mistake that turned into an awakening. The failure that cracked them open. The betrayal that forced them to become someone harder, sharper, stronger. At the time, they didn't know it was happening. They thought it was just another page in the book. But looking back, they realize it wasn't a page. It was the rewrite. It was the pivot. It was the second that split their life into before and after. And here's the real punchline. Sometimes the moment doesn't look dramatic at all. Sometimes it's quiet, almost boring. You don't realize its weight until much later, when everything has shifted and you finally trace it back. You see that it wasn't 1,000 little steps that changed your story. It was one step, one instant, 1 second of courage, or 1 second of weakness, 1 second of chance. That's all it takes. And the entire story you thought you were living is gone, replaced by a new one that doesn't care if you like it or not. So maybe the truth is this: you're never as safe as you think you are. Your story isn't locked. It's fragile, breakable, and one breath, one choice, one accident can rip it wide open. That's terrifying to most people, but it's also freeing. Because if one moment can destroy everything you thought you were, then one moment can also create everything you never thought you could be. A new era demands sacrifice of the old self. People like to cling to their masks, their routines, their illusions of who they are. They build this identity, this fragile little shell, and then they hold onto it like it's eternal. But when the tide shifts, when something bigger comes knocking, that version of you can't survive. It's too small, too weak, too tied to a world that no longer exists. And that's the cruel part. You don't get to carry the old self into the new era. You have to burn it. You have to let it die, piece by piece. If you want to step forward, of course, Most people fight this. They try to drag their old skin with them, convinced they can blend the past with the future. They cling to old habits, old fears, old excuses. They whisper, "I can change without losing myself." But that's the biggest lie of all. You can't change and stay the same. You can't step into something new while gripping the bones of who you used to be. Every new version of you requires a funeral for the old one. And the deeper the change, the heavier the sacrifice